enforce it. You know, the police, code enforcement, administration, public works is in these parks all the time, so we don't have a Parks and Rec department that most of these other places have, that have the enforcement and management of their ordinances. But Public Works is there, and it's not so much, we're gonna arrest you, it's just like, hey, I gotta see your permit. If you don't have a permit, they ask them to leave, and it's not a force issue, because somebody could say, I'm not leaving, and then it's a call to the police department if that happens, but.
I think that conversation starts with which of these departments works on the weekends.
Could you give everybody the same level of authority to enforce it, but if you're not working on the weekends, the Public Works would enforce it, but that's where the police would step in, but if it's during the week, then Public Works or admin has the same authority to go enforce it.
Sure.
Now, where does the issue of insurance and liability fall?
That's Bob will
You
explain
could
some of
require
that.
that as a condition of someone getting a permit. They would have to have insurance of a certain minimum amount of points.
We do that anyway, when they wanna use.
For all special events.
Yeah, I think it should be part of the permitting process, and any legitimate business already has that.
Usually the event organizer has the insurance, so if they're permitting for themselves, then they need to have.
Well, let's go back on that real quick though. I mean, if we're going to enforce that or require that for all permits, what if you're a small gym or a food truck? And maybe some small businesses don't have that insurance, like if you're doing photography, and if they still want to use the park. Can we have some kind of exceptions to that?
I guess a question I would have is, end of the day, we don't want the city to be liable for something that happens from a commercial business.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't really know what that threshold is, but,
And I'd say start off that with it as a requirement, and you, folks can tell you that it's a problem that you need to reconsider. Start with. If you're gonna have the process, have it
like, I don't,
as a requirement.
to your point, I don't know if like a yoga teacher would have that kind of insurance or something,
Yeah.
but I don't really know what's typical for something like that.
Some of the ordinances that I pull up was a number of person limit. It was like, you have 5, like we have a Tai Chi class that meets down at Veterans Beach, and there's usually 3 or 4 people there. And it's kind of I don't think it might be exempt because it's not a for-profit business, it's just people that get down there and do that, so that they can use the parks. That wouldn't even come under this, because it's not a commercial business. So most of them that are in these it's a commercial business doing business in the park. And I think one of the cities must have had a problem with CrossFit, because their ordinance on CrossFit was, what, 2 pages? And it was specific as to how heavy the weights could be, what the medicine ball could look like, if you brought big ropes, it was really, so somebody in some city kind of took over a park, and that's kind of what we're trying to avoid, is to have that kind of but I'll tell you, it's coming, The bigger we get, the more abuse we're gonna take, so.
And the pier, is gonna be developing the pier area
Right.
too. And I was wondering, Scott, your input on this.
So I think we touched on a lot of it. I question whether or not the long term would be permits as opposed to some type of lease. And then I guess a question on that, the attorney weigh in on, how you go about that solicitation, or whether that would be a permit. Granted a 1-year permit, the following year, first come, first served, when's that period open up? So I'm thinking along the lines of, you might have a solicitation like we do other things. And folks could bring forth their proposals, could select a proposal for that year period, and then the following year, you open it back up again for solicitation. So that, there would be businesses that wanna utilize the parks.
That makes sense, because the point previously, we're talking about lottery system, that doesn't feel like an equitable way to decide for long-term, users, you know, we're talking about a livery service, and we have more demand, I think, in our would be appropriate for something like that. Not a lottery system or anything that would be chance or, decided by one individual. Does that sound appropriate?
So then, in that case, correct me if I'm wrong, then you could have a limit to one permit for a certain business, but then you, to apply for the permit, you have to do the RFP.
Or,
Okay.
or, and I mean, I could probably do that even if you wanted to own multiple, or you thought it was a long-term deal where they were going to handle more than the number of spots you wanted to allow. I could say if we allowed 2 of those businesses to operate out of a given location, you can still do an RFP and just select the top 2.
It may be demand driven at the end of the day, right? We may not have.
Yeah, it's gonna be academic, right?
10 years ago, we did it, and we had 1 applicant.
But times are changing,
That is,
and I think it's wise to have this workshop and try to figure out how to do it. I look on this business as I have said it before, a wonderful service, and I think people really want that. And I was looking at one of these letters, talking about some of the things they've had in the past, you know, on our lake, and, those things could be coming, and to see how to manage it and keep it safe, and,
Terry, just for informational purposes, Terry's referencing 2 emails that were received by city council. That's all we had concerning the situation with 2 emails directly for this workshop, so. And she's referencing one that was, pro sports in the lake, and one that was not pro, they were con, so, against it, so. Activities. We talked about, just moving on, unless you guys have some more discussion on this point, and several of them do use different, they have leases and they have permits and they have vendor permits, they have merchandise permits. I mean, they do a combination of that, and we can kind of look into that if we get a little deeper and put together, once we get with Central Florida Regional Planning Council, they've got a library of these that can help us kind of focus to what maybe the good points and the bad points are, and, you know, kind of work through a lot of this stuff, so, once we kind of get the general information and get the public information, and then just kind of wrap it all together. We talked about that we would, number 2E is, to regulate the park, size of park, parking limitations, that kind of thing. You brought that up, Josh, I think that's a good idea, especially for the smaller parks at, you know, the Hidden Beach, have real restricted, you can't, I don't think you could have the same business on Hidden Beach and Crescent as you could on Vets Beach or City Pier Beach, so I think that's a good point that we
Many
need to.
businesses should be permitted for Crescent.
I think since we don't have a huge amount of parks, then I think we have the option to be more specific to each one. And then we have the ability and flexibility to adjust those as time goes on.
Correct. Good. Letter F, 2F is the adoption of rules and regulations, and what this is, and I've found through many of these ordinances, are the use and prohibition of public boat ramps and recreation areas. So what you can do with a public boat ramp, what you shouldn't be able to do with it. Then it boils down to a lot of commercial type watercraft, how long it can sit on a boat ramp. You know, it's got to be limited to a number of minutes. If you do allow that, picking up and dropping off passengers, when you do this, soliciting, advertising commercial activities, designating city sites as your physical address, you know, collecting compensation at a city site, you know, that's some of the things. And then to take it a little further, and I'm just kind of rattling off some stuff, they even get into litter, you know, you pick up your trash, what you're doing, discharge of waste, your fires, food and beverages, any kind of sale or something like that, which relates to smaller vendors and merchandisers. Camping restrictions, you know, it goes into a lot of different things, you know, vegetation disfiguration is some of it. I mean, there's a lot of, stuff, aircraft, you know, I thought this one aircraft wasn't probably proper, but right now an aircraft can come up on a beach, which, we have a lot of aircraft that land on Lake Jackson. That land on the other side of Lake Jackson, it's pretty cool to watch it, you know, and I think, and I'm not saying restrict aircraft, but I think there has to be some that say you can't pull up to City Pier Beach with an aircraft, because you can't even pull up there on a boat. So some of the stuff that we don't see are in these ordinances, we really kinda need to look at, I think, because it can happen, that does happen, so,
Does the county have an ordinance, that regulates the stuff like this at their programs?
I don't know, I didn't see it, so.
Or should you
Don't
know?
believe so.
I didn't see it. They're developing a ordinance now for,
HL Bishop?
yeah, H.O. Bishop Park, I think, so. I don't know how far they haven't gotten that finished yet, that I've heard of, so.
Since that's such a similar kind of deal to what we're talking about, I'd be interested to see what the price might be.
And that's, and we talked to with, to make sure that we're not crossing what they're doing. And they're not crossing what we're doing, trying to be consistent, so, you know, Lake Jackson's in the city of Sebring, Lake Sebring's in the city of Sebring, Dinner Lake is. Well, you go one lake over, now you're in the county. But, you know, you're only a few streets over, so we're trying to be cognizant of what they have. And try to be consistent as much as we can. There may be some differences, but, so we're kind of working on that end of it. But these are some of the things, if, we wanna look at, putting it in an ordinance, we can develop the ordinance with this stuff in it, this information in it. And then we've gotta bring it back for approval anyway, so then we can pick it apart, so.
You know, speaking of the aircraft thing, our lake, except for July 4th and a few other things, it doesn't get real crowded on our lake right now. But of course, the aircraft, those clubs, and I love to watch them too. And they come in and land and go over there to Sunset Grill, and they don't pull up on the beach. They just kind of get off and then off of the beach and then get out. But it takes a little bit of room for them to come in and take off. And that could be something in the future we need to look at. Because if there were a lot of boats and all, that could be a real problem.
They pretty much do a flyover before they land.
Yeah,
To make sure.
let everybody know.
But, you know, to reference Sunset Grill,
Mhm.
that's private. This does not regulate private property as far as beaches and commercial properties and that stuff.
So we don't
Kinda
have
what
to
regulates-
concern ourselves with any
What
of that.
regulates some of this stuff is zoning. So, you know, if it's commercial zoning, there's a lot more they can do than they can in residential, so. But so like Sunset Grill, if they're playing, if they do beach over there, that's pretty much their option.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't regulate it, but I don't know if there's a desire to do so.
Right, I mean, that's.
There's a designated seaplane landing strip on that side of the lake, essentially near
I did not know that.
an A's restaurant.
Yeah.
Runs essentially along 27 there.
Well, I know the clubs come in and it is fun to watch them.
So that, we'll input a lot of that into there. If you have any other ideas about what you think we need to monitor, gone through some of our ordinance too that we have, we have to cross-reference a lot of the stuff that we have. There's bits and pieces that they're gonna overlap and they do already.
We want it consistent.
We want it consistent in that, so.
Who oversees like the watercraft that are out there? Like the police, I mean?
FWC,
What does that mean?
Florida Wildlife Commission.
Oh.
There's a boat out there almost every weekend, so.
Oh, that's good.
Don't let your son, who's 10 years old, drive a 18-horse boat, because he's gonna get nailed, so. It was a $10 fine, so. But FWC is responsible, but state waters, so state regulates the water side of it. And there's regulations that, you know, that they have that we can't. So, you know, that's another issue. We're more on the property side of it. There is some leeway on the lakes that we have that have been approved. You know, mooring of boats, some dock issues, and so there is some stuff that overlaps with them, but in general, the FWC for boating, that is, the state regulates that. Now, the city and the fire department have boats that I believe can do some of that.
Right, we regulate,
In the county.
we have no wake zones.
Right.
Beaches and the
Right.
bridge.
County has to put it as well.
So that's, but the main enforcement issue for the lakes itself for boaters is FWC, so.
With this, I was just wondering, with this business, like renting out pontoon boats, do you have to have any kind of special license or anything?
There's a whole
Citizen
statute
asked
that,
me
yeah,
about that.
there's a whole statute that regulates what basically called a livery service on the water has to have as far as educational, as far as signage, as far as safety issues. I mean, there's a whole slurry of issues that, you know, the age limit that you can, you know, rent these
Operate,
to,
yeah.
insurances you have to have, waivers that you have to have, so I mean, it's a pretty,
You would want compliance with, you know, licensing and
Yes.
laws would be a condition of the permit for whatever the business is.
Correct. Documentation has to keep, you know, all sorts of things, so. Item number 3, since we're kind of going down the road of permitting or leasing, or, how about fees? We need to, we have no fees right now. I think we have if you have a special event, it's $25, but I don't think you ever collected, do you?
Used to.
Used to, so. But,
Because these are commercial businesses, I think we need fees that at least just cover our costs for managing the permitting, and whatever enforcement. I mean, yes, a fee, I think it should be small, just enough so that we're, to the point earlier, you're not subsidizing the cost of this with taxpayer dollars. So I don't think that needs to be much, but,
if you get into a long-term lease or permit,
it'd be a higher fee, I think.
different stories, but
Yeah, you know, still not, I think, outrageous, but, enough to cover the cost to implement the permit and whatever enforcement, or, you know, check, running down the licensing, all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
So I see on this paper from Jared about, you know, having some kind of, fee paid to the city for, you know, going through and having it, calculated out what would be fair. You know, that would be just looked at later on down the line.
well, it would have to be, since what Jared has given us is a tax if we don't, if the business is benefiting over X dollars amount. That becomes a tax to the city, a burden. So we would have to figure in, how do we implement that to cover those costs? That if it's a longer term lease, how do we cover that?
Right.
You know, we don't wanna tax the citizens, or burden the citizens for somebody that's got a for-profit operation, and we have to pay the tax on it, so.
One of several things we'll have to look into further to implement this.
Or do we just use that to help calculate our fees would be? Right, okay.
Pretty much we've gone through the agenda. Does council have anything else after we kind of go through this, and we'll get public input on any of this? What we will do then, we'll get with Central Florida Regional Planning Council, kind of put all the thoughts together, have them put together, help us format an ordinance, a basic ordinance, and then bring it back to city council, and it'll also be publicly announced. So, you know, it'll have to go through 2 readings.
And at that first point, we can tweak it, so we can talk about it.
Correct. Or second or third, or however long it takes.
I think one thing on permit price though, I don't think that, I mean, obviously cover costs too, but I think if you're a larger operation, I don't, and not that the city needs to be a profit center by any means too, but I think that permit price too should fluctuate too based on the value that we're offering too. That if, I mean, if you rented, or lease space from any other business on the lake or in a different part. I mean, there's probably gonna be a high rental cost and lease cost of that. Not that we need to be competitive with local market, but I don't think it should be the cheapest that we can either. So somewhere in between,
Okay.
just my 2 cents.
Okay. You know, zoning was brought up. Is there any interest in looking at changing any zoning? This time?
I don't think there's any need to.
In which regards, and like changing it from public? What do you mean?
Well, changing, if there's a zoning from residential to commercial or, you know, different zoning issues that we have out there, so. And uses in different zones.
Bob, what's your feeling on that?
I don't think we need to address that.
We've got a housekeeping issue to deal with, and that's that parcel of that beach. This is currently zoned R1A, the city owns it, needs to be zoned.
EU. Okay.
Can we put that in with all this other stuff?
For the benefit of the public, that there's a special zoning category for publicly owned property, and so the city has owned that for a number of years, and it should be rezoned to the correct zoning category for it.
Public use, EU. Any other?
And for the public benefit, it was a parcel that was privately owned, it was an R1A zoned parcel. The house used to belong to it. The city purchased that property for future expansion of Veterans Beach Park, so, just for everybody's benefit. That was back in 2006, I believe.
And this is probably what I handle too, but we just include you vacant land that the property owns. And not being able to use that, we're going through the same process.
We can, yeah, I mean, that's something we can take a look at on that, so.
Okay.
We can kind of identify that too, so. we know what we're talking about. Any other, comments you all like to make or questions? The public, we're gonna open this up to the public. No, we ask you to keep it short as possible. We'll give you the time that you need. But if you get long-winded, you're gonna have to deal with Ralph, so. Yes, sir.
Could you
Yeah, come on to the microphone and give us your name, where you live, and then you have approximately 3 minutes. Okay.
My name is William Hollinger. I live at 2002 Beach Drive. Would your report that you did the research for other parks be available to have a copy to be read here at City Hall? To understand more of what other people have done?
What we'll do is, I've got notes and a whole bunch of stuff here. We're gonna organize that into more of an ordinance and then give that to everybody. The public
Okay.
will have access to that, so when the meeting that it comes back to, you can get an advanced copy of that.
Okay.
It'll be a little more understanding, because it'll be, yeah, my notes are kind of all over the place.
Thank
But,
you.
We'll organize that for you. Thank you. Yes, sir. That's all right.
Good evening.
Phil Gilroy, I live on 1327 Chloe Terrace across the street from Lake Jackson. In relation, talking about this boat business that's going on next to Veterans Beach, I rented one of those little boats in May for my daughter's birthday. That was our present. We had a great time, everything was great. He's got 3 Craig Cats, 1 pontoon boat, and I think 3 tubes with umbrellas on, no motor. He could accommodate parking, if you're worried about Veterans Beach parking, on his property for his customers, easily. And they're not all rented all the time. I mean, there could be 2 sitting there and 1 out, maybe the pontoon boat's out. I go by it all the time because I pass his house going home. Wasn't he issued permits to,
No, sir.
not from the city?
No, sir.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And not to get too deep into the weeds on that one, but there's, in that R1A zoning, there's restrictions on parking, there's restrictions on how to handle businesses, so there's a lot of other restrictions that affect him. Or
Okay.
them, I should say, so.
Which means he has to do those things out of Veterans Beach to be compliance legally, correct? Right.
Pretty much.
And I'm not sure of this 100%. He could verify it. When the food trucks came, when he had his grand opening, I believe he paid for that. So people were getting free food. If that's what he did, I know he ain't doing that no more. That was a one-time thing. So that's not gonna happen again.
Okay,
And that's all I gotta say.
okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Danny Copeland. Not a real great speaker, but I feel strongly about
Can
the
you give us
issue.
your address, please?
Pardon me?
Your address, please?
I live at 2759 Pinewood Boulevard, right there off Lake Jackson. We have lake access. You have addressed a lot of issues that are real important. I've got 41 years using that ramp. I work for Highlands County, and 21 years I've used an airboat to take care of these lakes that you are talking about. I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to this. I've never seen people more courteous, more kind than this operation that's going on that is getting such a hard time. And I want to understand, these people are good people. When you had your jet ski races down there, I'm sure there was a fee in charge of that. When you have your bass boat tournaments, 21 boats were there Saturday, charging a fee to be on that lake. So it's no different, in my opinion, for that from the surfboard racing. We all love this stuff. We live on the lake. I put on events out there where 45 boats came. We have an association called Scream and Fly that we're a fast boat association. We brought them out to Sunset Beach Grill and Sunset Beach Motel before it turned into a dive, and we had a great time. I encourage you to get behind this. Pardon me?
So don't condone a business here.
All right, if you want some crack, you can get it. But anyway, it's bad.
Ask you to sit on it, that keeps it off.
It's real bad. It's real bad over there, and the law enforcement knows it. But I'm just gonna say, you have to get behind these people. They're doing a great thing. When you had the jet ski races there, this family took and cooked out of their own pocket, just like they did for this grand opening, when it had nothing to do with the business. Enough tacos to feed the families and the crews for free, because they're good people. They're just trying. Lamar, I know you don't care for this, but buddy, let me tell you, it's a good thing. People come there with church groups and everything, and they rent a pontoon boat. The impact to the ramp is zero. They don't even put their trailer there. I don't know if you realize this. One pontoon boat trailer, their trailers go back to their house. They are literally no impact. You want impact? Go down there on a Saturday, which I'm there every weekend, because we live right there. We have a pontoon and 2 jet skis, and watch what's going on that's a disarray, where the ramp is being used for a race course, in and out of the buoys with Sea-Doos and everything, and I own a Sea-Doo. And I watch, and I work with FWC. I'm at these ramps every day. Need to get behind these people, instead of giving them, and as far as the lease goes, check on the insurance sometime on what it costs to insure a pontoon boat and a couple little creek cats, no jet skis, just those creek cats, to put them out there on the water. They're not making any money. So whatever you charge them, if you have to rent them a little piece of property, be fair. For goodness sake, be fair. Because they're not making it. I mean, I have a whole bunch of stuff. I know I only got 3 minutes. I'm not going to talk about all this stuff. But, you know, people run businesses out of their houses. I don't see them doing businesses out of their house. Leonard, don't you have a business at your house?
I have an office.
Okay, don't people come there and show up?
No.
Never. Your employees never show up to your
My
house.
employees do. but
Okay,
they
that's kind of the same
leave.
thing. But at any rate, you know, I go there and have coffee on Saturday morning, every Saturday morning, and every Sunday morning before church. And I watch what goes on. And I watch a couple working very hard to not impact that ramp at all. Put 21 truck and trailers there with bass boats. That's an impact. No trailer there. They float a boat over, and one car parks and gets into a boat and drives away. It's not a lot. It's a little bit of traffic. Get behind these people. I mean, that's all I can say to you is, I have a lot of experience at the ramp. Been there 41 years. My daughter learned to swim at Crescent Beach 37 years ago. We are on that water every weekend. I encourage you to get behind them.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is David Burgett. I live at 421 Sassafras, which is basically right behind the tower. My wife and I go to that beach every single morning. I mean, every morning, unless it's downpouring rain. We also think they're doing a great job. There is no disruption on that beach at all due to them. How many people in this room were there during Labor Day? How many people? Let me tell you something. I went to Labor Day. We were there first thing in the morning. Both handicap spots was somebody with a barbecue grill and a truck that had music so loud you could barely hear. Sebring Police, my father's next policeman, I have all the respect in the world for the police, sat right there for about 30 minutes, then just drove off. That truck sat, we had no handicap spaces. If you can't enforce 2 handicap spaces, how are you going to enforce what you're all talking about? You all have great ideas. I love listening to your opinion. You know, Hidden Beach, I get all those beaches. Veterans Beach, you know, what are you gonna do with an ice cream truck that we saw that comes up there and parks? You guys, you just wanna enforce a lot of laws, but I don't know how you're going to enforce them when the city of Sebring, police department, we have a school zone that runs up and down. You come down Highland Park, you force our children to cross the street for a bus stop. There's not even a cross space for them, yet you make them. I lived here for many, many years. I can't once remember seeing a speed trap down there. Let's start enforcing. Well, have you guys ever walked down there? My wife and I do it. I have friends in this room that walk. Hell, I mean, these people fly down this road. I always see the Sebring policemen parked in the parking lot across, and I never realized, so that house right there, that belongs to the city? That's right there under the, okay, I never realized that. We see them there all the time. Can they just maybe once a week, especially during the school season, pick up a radar gun and start zapping these freaking people? I mean, you guys gotta see it. And I'm surprised nobody here was at Veterans Park during Labor Day, because you would have been, and let me tell you what, do you guys all know where Sunrise is? I'm sorry, Sassafras? Okay, we're right behind the tower. Okay, it's very small. The park goes into the cul-de-sac. We can hear the music so loud from our house. I can only imagine what these guys do during the holidays, especially. There's no enforcement of noise whatsoever. So before you start implying and putting more rules and more regulations, we gotta figure out who's going to enforce them and start enforcing what I'm assuming. Is there a noise ordinance down there like at Veterans Park?
There is, the courts have found that noise ordinances are unconstitutional.
Really? That's interesting. I'll remember that. I'll take my jam box down there next week. How about the handicap spots? Is there an ordinance on who's allowed to park in handicap?
There are state regulations on handicap parking, yes, sir.
So are you allowed to put a barbecue grill in there and cook all day long during Labor Day? Why did the Sebring police come up and not do anything? And I'm done. But like I said, before you start pushing in more rules and regulations and hurting people that are doing good for this community, how are you gonna enforce them?
The police department.
This is a workshop to discuss the use of Lake Jackson and public parks by commercial. I appreciate your comments, and those have to come up. But I don't want this to get off on a tangent. We're not here bashing anybody. We're trying to figure out how we manage this thing and move forward. And there's a lot more involved in that than just saying, hey, let everybody do what they want. I think what happens is you get out of hand, and that's what happens. When there's enforcement that shows up and we can do this, and we can move forward on it. So, but please restrict your comments to what this is at hand. So.
But also, Mr. Burkhead, please come back and present those complaints to the regular city council.
You can come back to a meeting and you get 3 minutes to say whatever you want, so, which is good information. I'm not saying I don't want to, nobody should be in a handicap unless you're handicapped, unless it was a one-legged guy cooking brats or something. But no, that's good information, and to come back to a regular city council meeting where if you're not on the agenda, you have 3 minutes to say what you've seen, and we appreciate that when you come here, because it helps. And the police department, the police chief is pretty much on it all the time, but he can't be in 100 places at one time. So, and, but I do appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And come back.
And we will be getting involved.
Okay, good.
I want everybody to realize, I'm not against business, I think it's a good idea. I just want to be sure that the citizens can still use their parks without a hassle. That's all I'm asking.
Can I mention one other thing too? I've seen some stuff leading up to this meeting, suggesting that we're trying to shut business down. That's the furthest from the case.
No,
that
I'm
could
not
possibly-
trying to shut it down, I just wanna make sure
Right.
that our citizens can still use the park and not be said, you can't.
What I'm trying to say before we get a bunch more comments, I'm not trying to shut down anyone's business,
No.
we're not trying to shut it down in any way, shape, or form. Just wanna regulate what's going on and make sure that it's fair for any other businesses and the public who use the park. It's as simple as that to me.
Ralph Flores, 4290 Lakeview Drive, the neighbor. When I bought property here in Sebring, Lake Jackson, one of the things that I noticed is unless I had a boat, I could just sit there as a tourist and look at the water. I mean, I could do that anywhere in the world. The idea was getting to get something, I bet at that time, when I first started coming to your meetings, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I mentioned that to you, and it said it was a good idea to have something like that on Lake Jackson. Some boat rentals or something where tourists can come in and enjoy the lake. Right now, tourists can come in and just look at the lake. Now that we have the boat rentals, they can enjoy the lake too. It is, I think it's something that we need there. Maybe it gives us some kind of rules or something, but we need this business on Lake Jackson. I don't care what we have to do to do it, but we need to do have this business.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I worked in a school, I raised my hand for everything, right? My name is Sam Johnson, I'm neighbor also to Kellyanne and Mike's. I have to agree with Mr. Copeland and everybody else, all the comments that are made. But my question is this, and Mr. Carlisle, thanks for what you had said about, parking and public access and all that stuff. It appears that Veterans Beach is truly the only area on the lake that is accessible by the taxpayers.
It is.
Can't get the Hidden Beach, can't get the Crescent Beach, and it's questionable by the pier. So if you're all having this meeting about businesses getting on the lake and stuff like that, that are really getting operated out of a private home, you need to ask yourself the true question, because a lot of it is about parking. What access does the public have to our beaches? Veterans is the only one, and that's why it's always so crowded.
Boat access.
Any access.
Well,
Can you park my car down by a veteran or by a Hidden? How about-
City Pier you can.
Yeah, but is there a boat ramp there?
No, it's what I'm saying, there's
One
not-
boat
But-
ramp.
And that's a veterans. So you see what I'm saying? The only beach that has true public access is veterans. Even the city is not adequate. Put a boat ramp and maybe you got it there. Okay, and I don't wanna get off on a tangent, but that seems to be the issue. The only beach that has
Well,
true
and
public
that's-
access.
That's what we're trying to establish, is how do we regulate that business? How do we allow a business to operate on public, not just the boat ramp, but all public parks and that? That's kind of what we're trying to establish here now. There's other issues that come into play, and there's zoning issues about running businesses in R1A zone.
Right.
which
Let me
is-
ask you this.
can. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think more of the busyness at Veterans would go to Hidden if they're swimming and doing all that, if they could park there? Or maybe Crescent? Or even at the pier here, if they could swim or get their boat there? I'm saying, let's share the wealth instead of all funneling it to Veterans. Let's look at getting some parking and some boat ramps at other places.
Hidden and Crescent are landlocked, basically.
We bought the
City
Women's Center,
piers, pardon?
we purchased the Women's Center, right?
Exactly.
And the property to the south.
But you see what I'm saying? If we're forward thinking, let's forward think about getting parking and access to those other beaches. Or maybe formulating a new beach, which I know has got a whole nother state headaches,
You're
over
on
there
that
by the
committee. You're on
Pizza
that
Hut.
committee, how does that sound?
Sign me up. No, I am done with public service. I mean, another beach out by 27 by the Pizza Hut, to me, would make so much sense. I know what the hurdles are, I know what the headaches are, but that would make so much more sense.
There used to be a
Bring
beach,
it to
there
us.
used to be a beach all
There
along.
used to be a
27.
beach from the bridge to Hammock Road.
I
When I
know.
was a kid, it was one big white beach,
I know.
picnic tables, everything.
Yeah, I remember your times because I knew about that, you know, and that's where I wanna be. You know, that, to me, those were my 3 minutes are up, but those were the times.
Thank
Let's get the
you.
other
Thank you for your
beach.
comments.
What happened to that beach, Martin?
The 27 came in.
Yeah, they
They
pulled all the
widened
sand
it,
up and made a 27.
and that's all state property there.
It was supposed to have been put back, but I think the environmentalists got involved.
I do see a lot of boats, you know, when I go up down
Yeah,
there,
they,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Keith Wilson, 745 Lamont Drive, Sebring. I'm just curious, who controls the bird scooters? They sit all around on city property. How are they regulated? They
what?
take the bird scooters that you see all over
Oh.
town, all the parks, down
When
the
that,
circle.
when that business came to fruition, they came to city council and got a use permit for that business.
Okay.
So, and it was designated where they could put now, where they're dropped off, I can't tell you what happened. They're
Right.
supposed to pick them up on a daily basis.
But I know from experience that they stay on the public parks.
Correct.
And I see families park their vehicles in those areas,
Right.
take the bird scooters and go elsewhere, same as on the circle and everywhere else. There's no regulation to that, which there are tons more of those vehicles on the roads than you see for this boat
But
rent service.
that business, they came to city council and got approval for that.
Right, and that's what we're in the process of doing. So how that situation was addressed, if our concern is, you know, flooding Veterans Beach with vehicles parking there and prohibiting, you know, citizens, which the citizens are using this service more than probably anyone from out of town, I would say. How did we regulate that, or is there any regulation for that? They're dropped off wherever they want to be dropped off,
Correct.
and then people park, take up space to go ride that elsewhere. I understand they came to city council, I think that's what everyone here is trying to do. Maybe look at that model and see how that has really affected parking or anything. It hasn't, to my knowledge. I mean, you see them everywhere, and they're picked up all over town. So I think if you look at that model, the point of sale system, you don't have to accept payment on public property. They could set up the same point of sale system on their watercraft, and purchases be made that way. I just don't see a difference in it taking up physical space as far as parking and overflowing, you know, a public beach. That's it.
Thank you. Any further comments on the use of Lake Jackson in public parks by commercial businesses? Mr. Lawrence.
I'm Charlie Lawrence, I live at 3720 Lakeview Drive. And I think it's a great thing that this guy has written these boats out. And I think that we need to figure out how to encourage that instead of how to stop them. I don't understand some of the differences. I called up Lake June Pontoon Boat Rentals before he was there. They dropped off a pontoon boat for me at Veterans Beach. And I rented it for 2 days. They came and picked it back up. So him running his business out of his quote unquote house, I don't understand the difference if he does business at Veterans Beach just like Lake June Pontoon Boat does, or other businesses. And also, I'll get into the food trucks a little bit, but and the permitting process with the food trucks, I think it's great. I do think there needs to be a limit, but that's a public service. A lot of us go down to Veterans Beach and we would like to get something to eat. If we're hanging out there, we didn't want to bring the barbecue grill and all that other stuff. So I do think it's a public service, just like the boat rentals is. But in order for him to be able to rent a boat, quote unquote, I guess, out of his house, he drops it off at Veterans Beach. Somebody picks it up, they pay him. And then when they're done, they come and get it. So I'm not sure where he's violating anything. Is it that he's got too many boats on his residential property? And if so, I think you're allowed 2 boats and a couple jet skis or something. Or if he parks them off-site somewhere, can he still bring them to Veterans Beach and rent them? There's other places that do that. Lake June Pontoon is one of the ones that I'm familiar with. I know there's someone else that also rents jet skis, and they'll drop them off at Veterans. You pick them up, you have a good time, you come back 4 hours later, they pick them back up. So what's the difference between him doing it just because he's next door and that's where the boats are parked, or the boat? I think he only has one boat, one pontoon boat. So is he in violation of something there?
Question is, there's commercial activity going on in the parks, and is that something that council wishes to regulate on a going forward basis?
Okay.
And there's probably lots of businesses we don't know anything about that are using that park or perhaps other parks for differing things, and sort of the time is right to start looking at whether or not there should be regulation.
Okay. So in other words, the other people are kind of, there is no regulation to prevent them from doing it, or we're looking at establishing a regulation?
The latter.
Okay, so right now, there's not a regulation against it? Correct. Okay. But I do think, you know, we're always looking at things for young people to do around here. And you know what? I've been to a lot of different communities. Down in Coconut Grove, they rent sailboats down there off the public pier. I think it's great. Daytona Beach, they rent lawn chairs, you know, and they have a bid every year as to who can do it, and they have an exclusive right. Whoever gets the high bid to give to the city, they get the exclusive right to go out there and rent beach chairs and or food trucks and stuff. And that might be a way to figure out how to make the most money for the city in a sense, if you get a lot of demand. But we need something for the young people to do, you know? Paddle boards out there, you know, pontoon boat, whatever, you know? So I would like to encourage you guys to encourage these businesses and figure out a way to make it happen instead of just shutting them down with regulations.
Well, we're not shutting, Charlie, you sat on the council, so you don't understand what
Yeah.
pressure we're under. We have to, we were put on the council, and especially the ones that had to vote. Thank God I don't have to vote on this, but,
Yeah.
you know, but I do have an opinion. But we were, part of your oath to taking office was to abide by the rules of the city of Sebring and enforce them. When they started that business, they were in violation of 5 ordinances and a zoning. And that's what we're trying to see how we can work around that, but right now you say they've got 1 boat and 2 things. Well, you wanna know what the definition, and you said on the council.
Yep.
I don't think you were here when this was done, but you wanna know what the definition of a boat is in our ordinances?
Go ahead.
Boat means any man-made item which floats and is designed to be propelled by oars, paddles, sail, motorized power, or by any other means, and includes personal watercraft. So your floating docks, technically by our ordinance, is a boat. Your paddle boards are technically a boat. Those craft, or whatever that's called, those are boats. So how many of these do they have?
Yeah, well, they do
You've
have,
got-
in that case.
You know,
they
there's
have-
been 9 of them out there that I've seen as far as paddle boards. But that's the issue that the city council has to deal with, is how do we enforce our ordinances, but also how do we work through them to make sure if the business model is great. I think it's very well used. I see them flying all over the lake. But this is what, the problem that the city council has at this time is that business technically they were denied a conditional use permit to run that business. But it's still running, so now we have to figure out how do we work through this? And part of that is getting this ordinance put together and then addressing the other issues that we have, so.
I know it's not an easy thing to do all the time and whatnot, but again, I just want to encourage you to encourage businesses here and figure out a way to make it happen, a way to say yes instead of a way to say no. So, and again, considering everybody, the neighbors and all that stuff, but it is a big benefit for the citizens, and myself included in this, to be able to go down and rent a boat somewhere. Because, you know, we may not want to buy a boat, or I may not want one sitting out there to use 3 times a year. So somehow we need to figure out how to make it happen. So, thank you.
Any other comments? If not,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to respond to, I'm Deborah, and we live,
Deborah,
Ramsdale, and we live just beyond the park as well.
Can you pull that microphone down?
Brunner's Modular Home Park, or retirement community. But it's not just for the young, us old people like it too. We, bunch of us 70-year-olds rented it one day. What was nice is, my friend has had a stroke and I broke my foot. So he was able to pull up to the dock and let us get on because neither one of us could move or walk. So it's not just for the young, it's for us old people too.
All right, no further comments, so I'll turn it over to you.
You wanna close?
Yep.
Close.
Thank you for coming.
That was fun.